The grocery store was almost silent that night. Only the low hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional squeak of a cart echoed through the wide aisles. Outside, rain pelted the windows, streaking down like tears from a darkened sky. Inside, Emma stood at her register, scanning items with the monotony of someone who had been on her feet for 10 hours. Beep. Bread. Beep. Milk. Beep. A small pack of diapers. She barely looked up at the customers anymore. For Emma, this job was survival. The paycheck wasn't much, but it kept the lights on in her tiny apartment and food in her own fridge. She never expected the events of this night to change everything she thought she knew about kindness, sacrifice, and the cost of doing the right thing. At first glance, the woman at the counter looked like anyone else. Her hair clung damp to her forehead from the rain, her coat was worn, and her hands shook slightly as she placed each item on the conveyor belt. Behind her, a little boy clung to the handle of the cart, his big brown eyes wide with quiet innocence. His shoes looked too small, his socks slightly torn. Emma scanned the last item, and the total appeared on the screen. $38.27, she said mechanically. The woman froze. She pulled out her wallet and fumbled with it. Inside were just a few crumpled bills and a handful of coins. Her face flushed red as she counted under her breath, her fingers trembling. The little boy tugged at her sleeve. "Mama, can we get the milk?" he whispered. Her lips quivered. She didn't look at Emma. She didn't look at the line of customers waiting behind her. She simply stared at the pitiful amount in her palm. I'm sorry," she stammered softly. "I don't think I have enough. Maybe I'll just leave some things." Emma's chest tightened. She had seen this before, too many times. People forced to choose between bread and diapers, between feeding themselves or their children. She looked at the boy's hopeful eyes, then at the weary mother, and something inside her snapped. Without a second thought, Emma reached into her pocket, pulled out her own debit card, and slid it across the counter. "It's fine," she said gently. "I've got it." The woman's eyes widened in disbelief. No, you don't have to. "Please, I can—" But Emma shook her head. "It's okay. Just take the groceries. Your son needs them." For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then the boy smiled shyly, clutching the bag of bread like it was treasure. The mother's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "Thank you. Thank you so much." But before Emma could say anything more, a sharp, angry voice cut through the air. "Emma, my office, now." The store manager, Mr. Richards, stood near the door with his arms crossed. His face was tight, his jaw clenched, and his eyes were filled with disdain. Emma's stomach sank. Inside the cramped office, Richards slammed the door shut. "What do you think you're doing?" he snapped. Emma tried to stay calm. She didn't have enough money. It was just a few dollars. "I couldn't let her." "You couldn't let her what? Walk out empty-handed? That's not your concern. This is a business, not a charity." Emma swallowed hard. "I paid with my own money. It wasn't from the register." Richards leaned forward, his voice like ice. "That doesn't matter. You embarrassed this store. You made us look weak. And if every cashier started playing hero, we'd go bankrupt." Emma's hands curled into fists at her sides. "So you'd rather see a child go hungry?" "That's not my problem," Richards barked. "You're fired. Pack your things, now." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Fired. Just like that. No discussion. No compassion. Emma walked out of the store that night carrying not just the sting of injustice, but the heavy weight of uncertainty. How would she pay her rent? How would she survive without this job? The rain was still falling when she stepped outside. It soaked her clothes, blurred the neon lights of the store, and mixed with the tears she hadn't realized were streaming down her own face. That night, Emma lay awake in her tiny apartment staring at the ceiling. She replayed the moment over and over in her mind. She wondered if she had made a mistake. Maybe Richards was right. Maybe kindness had no place in a world that only cared about profit, but the universe had other plans. The next morning, her phone buzzed, then buzzed again, and again. Calls, texts, notifications. She groaned and pulled the blanket over her head, trying to ignore it. But when it wouldn't stop, she finally sat up and checked, and what she saw nearly made her drop the phone. A video. Her video. Someone had recorded the entire scene at the checkout counter. The mother's trembling hands, Emma's quiet act of kindness, the manager's angry outburst. And that video had gone viral. Overnight, millions of people had watched it. Thousands were commenting, sharing, retweeting. Who is this cashier? This woman deserves a raise, not to be fired. Heroes still exist. Emma stared in shock. News outlets were tagging her. Strangers were flooding her inbox with messages of support. Some offered her money. Others offered her jobs. By afternoon, reporters stood outside her building, cameras flashing as they shouted questions. Neighbors stopped her in the hallway just to shake her hand. For the first time in her life, Emma felt like the world actually saw her, not as a tired cashier, but as a human being who had chosen kindness. That evening, a soft knock came at her door. When she opened it, she froze. It was the young mother. Her son clutched a small handmade card with shaky handwriting that read, "Thank you, Miss Emma." Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "We saw everything. I don't know how to repay you. You didn't just give us groceries. You gave us hope." Emma knelt down, smiling at the boy. "No thanks needed. Just promise me one thing. When you grow up, be kind. Pass it on." The boy nodded seriously, as though Emma had entrusted him with a sacred mission. Within a week, Emma's life was unrecognizable. A local business owner, moved by the viral video, offered her a new job, double the pay, better hours, real respect. Charities reached out asking her to join their efforts to feed struggling families. The world had not just noticed her, it had embraced her. Meanwhile, the grocery store that had fired her faced an avalanche of backlash. Boycotts, protests, empty aisles. The community turned its back on the place that had turned its back on humanity. Mr. Richards vanished under the weight of his own cruelty, his reputation ruined. But Emma didn't waste time gloating. She poured her energy into helping others. She partnered with food banks, organized donation drives, and volunteered her time wherever she could. Every paycheck she earned, she set aside a portion, not for herself, but to quietly help those who needed it most. And every so often, she'd see that same mother and her little boy in town. They would wave, their smiles brighter than any paycheck could ever bring. Emma realized then that kindness wasn't weakness. It was strength. The kind of strength that outlives jobs, managers, and rules. The kind of strength that could inspire millions of strangers across the world to believe in humanity again. Sometimes, the smallest act, a swipe of a debit card, a bag of groceries, can set off a chain reaction more powerful than we ever imagine. Emma hadn't just helped one family. She had helped remind the world of something it was beginning to forget, that compassion still matters. That kindness is never wasted, that even in the darkest places light can spread. And though she lost her job that night, Emma found something greater. She found her calling. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness costs us everything. But sometimes it gives us back more than we ever imagined. Emma didn't lose her job, she found her purpose. She didn't just help one mother, she helped millions rediscover hope. So the next time you're faced with a choice, to turn away or to step forward, remember this. One act of compassion can echo louder than 1,000 words. And maybe, just maybe, the world is waiting for you to be that echo. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. And tell us in the comments, what's one small act of kindness that changed your life?